Islamic Studies and Interreligious Chaplaincy from the Graduate Theological Union of Berkeley, California. She also completed a clinical pastoral education residency and fellowship at Stanford Hospital, California in 2019 to 2021. Her advanced diploma in Islamic Studies was awarded by Aries University, Kuala Lumpur, while her undergraduate degree was in Civil and Environmental Engineering from Northwestern University, Illinois. Chaplain Sakina also received classical Islamic training in Yemen and Indonesia. She is an active member of the Association of Muslim Chaplains North America and on the Ziara Muslim Spiritual Care Board. Chaplain Sakina is also an advisor and counselor for I Love Quran Tafsiz and Khadija Learning Center in Malaysia. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Chaplain Sakina. We will have a Q&A session throughout the session, so if you have any questions for her, just wait for the queue and wait until then. Thank you so much.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for joining us at this session. I see some familiar faces who've joined other sessions I've had throughout the day, and I appreciate you coming back for more, and some new faces as well, alhamdulillah. I know you have a lot of options of sessions to go to, and sometimes it's very difficult to choose where we go in a conference like this. All the parallel sessions sound so interesting, or not. But the fact that you're here, I want to thank Allah and I want to thank you for the opportunity that brings us together. And I want to sincerely have the intention inside me and invite you to set your own intention as well, that we maximize benefit from this session as much as we can. That maybe this is an opportunity for us to just feel safe and welcome in a space in this crowded building in this moment. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to make a new friend in the room. Maybe this is an opportunity for us to learn something new. Maybe nothing new. Maybe you know all this already, but it affirms what you know, and that you can be reminded of it and share it with others and benefit them as well beyond this session, inshallah. So I wanted to begin by sharing and by stating that this is not a session where we'll be diagnosing anybody or saying, okay, this person is suicidal or not. This is not a session for therapy. And having said that, if whatever we discuss triggers something inside you, we don't know what each person is going through. You can feel comfortable to put up your hand, let me know, or if you want to step away and come and talk to me after the session, that can all happen, but the session itself is not supposed to be one person's therapy session or anything like that, so we'll manage the time and the conversation accordingly. This is a brief info sharing. We'll talk a little bit about suicide awareness, suicide intervention, suicide postvention, what happens after, and this is not enough. As you can expect, just having 1 hour to discuss something like this is not enough. And at the same time, I want to acknowledge, I think some of you heard this already in some of my other sessions, even just over these couple of days that we've been here, I've had multiple people come up to me and say either their child has attempted suicide, or they were considering it, or their spouse was going through something, or they tried to go to their masjid and talk to somebody to get help about suicide, but nobody responded to them or nobody called them back. And that's very sad. That is very sad for me, because at the end of the day, why are we here for this session specifically? We're here in dunya for many reasons, mainly to live out and experience Allah's attributes and Allah's names, and to serve Allah and to serve our community. But in the context of today's topic, we are here to me mainly because of these two main ayats, a reminder to us that the life of each and every one of us is so precious, that Allah equates that life, one life, with the whole of An-Nas, the whole of humankind. And so sometimes when people are going through thoughts of their life being worthless, or thoughts of giving up, or just not knowing what to do, not feeling any love or any value. In a session we had this afternoon, a sister basically said that her parents told her that they didn't love her because she was trying to be a better Muslim. And they were like, why can't you just be normal like your other siblings? Why do you have to try to be such a good Muslim? She's like older, she's not a teenager, she's in her 40s or something, and she's been carrying this. So that sense of worth that we get is not from humans. That would be lovely, that would be wonderful, and it should be. We should be supporting each other and validating our sense of worth. But ultimately our sense of worth comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah that equates each one of us, life of each one of us, to the whole of humanity. And that life is not just this physical body of life. You know, life is way more than that. Just being physically healthy doesn't make you necessarily feel fulfilled or feel peace of mind or feel peace of heart or happy or anything like that, even if you have your physical health. Sometimes you may not have your physical health, but you actually feel more alive, just alive, just engaging with life. So, and on the other hand of that, on the other side of that conversation, if we are able to help one person, if we are able to change the mind of one person, if we are able to help one person to feel that the karam that Allah laqad karamna bani Adam, that kirama from Allah, that honor from Allah, we are able to help one person feel that and save their life, then it is like we're saving all of mankind, all of humankind. I don't say this lightly. I ask us to really reflect on this ayah. It's not just like, okay, alright, save one life, okay, go. But how many of your friends that you could have helped in a situation like this? So when we talk about suicide, sometimes there's questions of, well, are we speeding up our death, or somebody speeding up their own death? If we say Allah has set our ajal, our time of death is fixed, and it can't be speeded up. So then, am I meant to die anyway? Then am I just die this way or die that way? That is a larger conversation. And I think for the purpose of this conversation, we want to focus more on the specific topic of suicide itself. And we know and understand that yes, the time of death is fixed. How we, in the conversation around qadar, like all of this is already in Allah's awareness and Allah's knowledge and Allah's wisdom, and we are carrying out our part of it. We still have willpower, and our willpower is within Allah's knowledge. So no, we are not making our death quicker by someone dying by suicide. It's not like they're necessarily, they would have lived longer. Wallahu alam, if that was their time of death, then Allah has decreed that in whatever which way they would have died anyway. And the conversation is now our role in this whole conversation about suicide, our own awareness, our own prevention for ourselves, for other people. Not so much arguing the semantics of, well, when were they supposed to die? Were they supposed to die next week? If they hadn't done this, then they would have Wallahu alam. That is all in Allah's hands. So let's start with a question. I'm not going to be the only one talking, inshallah.
If anyone has a question, raise...
I have a question.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, my bad.
So true or false? Islam recognizes intense grief, feelings of rejection, isolatedness, hopelessness. True? Based on? Wadduha? Yeah, I'd love that. That Rasulullah SAW was going through periods of grief, that he felt that Allah, in a way, maybe had wondering if Allah had abandoned him and not having any revelation after the first revelation for a while. And then Allah sent Surah Al-Duha as a comforting, as a reminder, I got your back. I have not left you. I have not abandoned you. I'm here. So who else said true? What were you thinking when you were saying true? Mm. Yeah, that could recognize that period of mourning. Absolutely, and that's a way of Islam validating and acknowledging there is that period of grief and mourning. Brother in white? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hopeless. La taqnat min rahmatillah. Do not despair of Allah's rahmah, Allah's mercy, Allah's compassion. So this is great. We can just skip to the second part. It just feels that sometimes we know theoretically that the Quran says that, and the Hadith example says that, and the whole surah talking about that Islam does recognize those feelings and they are valid. And yet, sometimes when people come to us with struggles or suicidal ideation, we hear responses like, well, you have iman, then just rely on your iman. Like, how are you feeling so depressed? Or how are you considering taking your life? Don't you know the other ayat in the Quran which says if you take your life, you're taking the whole of humankind's life? Then where's the ayat that the brother just mentioned about not despairing and returning to Allah's hope? And this was one of the ones that I chose, and definitely like all the other examples that you all gave as well. Sometimes I remember this ayah in Surah Al-Kahf, which we recite inshallah every Friday. فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِئٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ إِن لَّمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَسَفًا. Are you going to like worry yourself, Ya Nabi? This is Allah talking to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Are you going to worry yourself to death over the grief of these people not believing? So acknowledging that even Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam's grief and frustration was to that level of worrying to death, in the words of Rasul, in the words of Allah. So that, again, the acknowledgement and the validation of the grief and the hopelessness, and that coming and going in different phases of our life. True or false? Islam allows me to wish for death. Ooh, yes, no, maybe. I should put a maybe there. True, false, maybe, depends. Brother? True in the sense that we are hoping to return, wanting to return to Allah. Okay. One sister said maybe. Mm-hmm. Well, you got my next point, exactly. So in this hadith, Rasulullah said that none of you should long for death because of a calamity that has befallen him. And if he cannot but long for death, then he should say, Ya Allah, let me live for as long as living is better for me, and take my life if death is better for me. And Imam Bukhari actually puts this hadith in two sections. One in the book of Da'wat, in the book of Dua, book of invocations, and one in the book, the chapter of patient, the one who is sick, like patient as in someone who's sick. Because the context was that this person was going through an illness and they felt that they couldn't handle it anymore. So in my other hat of hospital chaplaincy, this topic comes up when we're talking about palliative care or hospice, or patients who are going through very critical illness, and they're asking about life support and questions like that. And what about physician-aided death, which is approved in some states in the US? But coming back to today's context, yeah, so Islam allows me to kind of wish and hope for a death as in a reunion in Jannah, a reunion meeting Allah. And we're always asked to make dua for dunya and akhirah. So in a way to get there, we have to die first, right? But from that sort of hopelessness, grief, suicidal perspective of death, there is this dua of that surrender. Like, I don't want to be here. And I know that you said that I have to live and I can't take my life. Okay, Allah. Then there's even this like backup dua. And again, that just shows the mercy of Islam, of recognizing that very real emotion that somebody is going through. And that is encapsulated in a dua that becomes a sunnah. When we practice a sunnah, we are even rewarded. So that's another perspective to look at. True or false? Recent research shows that approximately 95% of people who died by suicide were suffering a mental illness. Any guesses? Yeah, okay. Brother back? You think it's true also? Yep. Okay. Yes, it is. Well, again, when it comes to research, there's different research depending on what you're quoting. And the one that, so some of my references here are coming from an organization called Maristan, Maristan. And Maristan is it's a non-profit that's associated with the Stanford University and Stanford Medical School, where they have a Muslim mental health lab under Dr. Rania Awad. So a lot of these, the research that I'm quoting, you can find on their website, or you can find on the IPSU, Islamic Policy Social Unity. Oh, I need to think of the acronym. And that organization does a lot of research across Muslim populations in the US. So this is not Muslim specific. This is a general data that shows people were suffering mental illness. And I know that's a bit hard to define sometimes, and whether they're defining it as people who have been diagnosed and have received care, and documented in their medical charts that they have a mental illness, or they had suffered an episode of mental illness, or they were at a time in their life where their mental health was weak or unstable based on family opinion, and then these are the people they interviewed after the suicide. So there's different parts of the report that kind of quote different aspects of that data. But to the point of the brother, that a large number of people who actually complete suicide are in a situation where they would be declared mentally unfit, unhealthy. True or false? Suicide is a sin in Islam. True? Okay. Anyone going for false, or maybe, or it depends? So I would go with true, subject to, as with most things in Islam, in a situation where the person is a mukallaf, someone who has mental capacity, is fully aware of what they're doing, has an intention and the volition, the rational person with full sanity when they commit an act of suicide, then that is a sin. However, we go back to this statement, when the reality is that most people who have reached that level of pain and hopelessness of their suffering are not at that capacity, are not fully in that capacity, even if they may appear functioning on the outside. So some people are able to still function on the outside and go to school and seem fine, or maybe they're like a celebrity even, and they seem fine. Last week they were on TV, Twitch. You guys watch news, you guys follow, maybe some of you. There was another celebrity last week who seemed fine, who seemed like a nice person and a lovely family, and died by suicide just a couple of weeks ago. So, but what is going on inside a person's heart and soul and mind, even if we're living in the same home as them, who might not be fully aware? And in Islam, we also have this discussion around this topic when it comes to not knowing somebody's intention and not knowing somebody's full capacity. Like when during the battle, I think was it in Badr or Uhud, when Ali radiallahu anhu was going to was fighting someone, and the person then said La ilaha illallah, and then he dropped his sword with the point that, look, I don't know, even if this person said it just to avoid dying, I don't know what's in their heart at the end of that last moment, and I'm not going to be the one who's going to be killing somebody who has surrendered or who has said La ilaha illallah at that moment. So that awareness of being very careful when we reach the end of the presentation, we'll talk about judging some of these people who have completed suicide, and then their family members, and then do we do salat janazah for them? Do we bury them in the same burial ground as other Muslims? Because there is some contention around that. So coming back to when is it an actual sin? I'm not, in the conversations with Marista, we're very clear to not, we are not wishy-washy in saying that it's okay. We're not trying to normalize suicide to the point of like, it's okay, it's understandable. If it's at a prevention stage, we want to be clear that action is a sin, and there are many other sins in Islam also, but suicide is one of them, yes. And the conditions are that this person is a mukallaf with full volition, with full awareness, and full mental capacity, and full sanity at the point of making that decision. At the point of making that decision, in that day, in that moment. And we don't know that. We don't know that for almost 90 whatever % of the case, research aside, but do we know the last moments of somebody's life, what is actually going on in their minds and hearts? We don't. So the judging part we leave to Allah. Now our role in this dunya is going back to how can we help support other lives, how can we not extend harm to other people by then talking about them or insulting them and their family and causing other issues that have domino effects when it was completely unnecessary and in fact is harmful. Let's talk a bit about language. What's the difference between completing suicide, attempting suicide, suicidal ideation? Before I proceed, actually, I wanted to check, is anybody in this room in this field, mental health field or medicine or psychology, anything? Anyone? Nope. I can just make up stuff? No. No one's going to check me. No, I was hoping somebody would be. Then we can have a bit of more voices in the room. And anyway, any of you also have a lot of experience in this. Please just share your voices and share your opinions anytime. So, what's the difference? What's completed suicide? What's attempted? What's suicidal ideation? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Suicidal ideation is to play with the idea and to like it
Mm-hmm.
and use it in articulation ways.
Yeah. So when we say somebody, there's different languages around suicide. So we don't, the language currently in mental health awareness is not to say they killed themselves, for example. We say somebody died by suicide or somebody completed the act of suicide. And an attempt is made when a physical, actual attempt has been made. For example, if they cut themselves or they actually ingested some pills, or they've done something and they've attempted, but then they have survived. And then ideation is coming from that word idea, where people are having ideas or they're contemplating dying. And then within suicide ideation, we can have a couple of categories also. Like, is somebody just saying things, which you might do in the assessment stage, which we'll come to later. Is somebody just saying, I don't think I want to live anymore? So, not really specific. I don't think I want to live anymore. Okay. I really feel like I'm better off dead. Kind of different level. I just don't want to be in pain anymore. I don't want to live anymore. I feel like I'm better off dead. A little bit more concrete. Or, like walking into the ocean and not coming out. sounds pretty interesting. So now there's like an idea developing of maybe what I might want to do, or somebody who has purchased certain medication or pills or something. So the ideation is in the mind, and the ideation is also coming into now action, not just ideation. So the different levels of conversation that we have with somebody who might come to you, or a friend who might just casually talk to you about something they're going through, you can kind of be curious and just check, like, so, like, what do you mean you've thought about it? Like, say more. When you have thought about it, like, what do you mean? Let them express a little bit more what's going on inside their minds about the level of how much they've gone through progressing with their ideas. And then we can do the referral accordingly. So the other aspect is the risk and the prevention factors, which are basically the same. This is the same things that are potential for risks of increasing the rate of suicide in a person, are also the same factors that can be supportive to prevention and support. Just checking time. We're supposed to finish at? Because we started a little late, kan? 3:15. So the factors are this, and some of you who came to the earlier sessions, we've talked about this already. When it comes to mental health, it's never really just about mental health. Like this whole perspective of us as a human being. Okay, we have time. As a whole human being, our emotional health, our spiritual health, our financial health. There are people who die by suicide because they feel the financial burden in their lives, and that contributes to it. So it's rarely just one aspect of life, and it's rarely just, oh, there's something wrong in their head. It's usually a combination of life stresses, which will be elevated during times of, for example, transition. Somebody's going through a transition in life, a role transition or a location transition, and not finding support in community. Somebody who's going through intense abuse or distress or conflict in their important relationships in their life and just feeling lost of hope. Somebody who's feeling very isolated from support system and resources and just feeling like they don't really have anywhere else that they can reach out to. So the perspective, again, if someone or yourself going through something that you feel is related to this, to look at the other aspects of life also. What could use some balancing? What could use some support? Where do you might want to reach out to? Are you not taking care of your eating, your sleeping, and all of that? It's like months and months of instability of hygiene, emotional health, work or studies. Are you facing abuse at work, at school, that you're not being able to share with anybody, and now it's escalated and it's been months and months? So just opening up the dimensions of our holistic health. We talked about this also similarly. What are some of the contributing factors? So whether it's like a neurobiological condition that somebody's happening and their personality can change, or they're under the influence of a certain drug or alcohol at the time, or whether it's more spiritual, psychological struggles that they're going through. So again, these struggles are also the protective factors. So if we do have and cultivate in ourselves, in our community, the awareness, the support that protects and improves our resilience when it comes to social relationships, psychological relationships, mental health, physical health, then in general it will be a healthier environment. So these risk factors are also the preventative coping mechanisms. Same diagram, but for those who like bright colors. I call this the serious version and this the fun version, but it's the same content. So Okay. And these risk factors and the preventive factors, we can discuss it at various levels. So one is for your own self, the health, your health, your spiritual health, your environment, living environment, and then at the level of the community, the family. So it just keeps opening up, kan? And we are an ummah, so whatever condition we are facing, ideally it's not just one person's issue, it's the whole ummah's issue. If our hadith talks about, Rasulullah talks about one person feeling pain, the ummah is like a whole body, right? You feel pain in one side, then the other side feels it too. How is that not present in our actual ummah? So this conversation, I think, and the topic is also important in a space like this where people realize that more people, maybe I can talk about it to somebody here. Maybe they won't think I'm stupid or silly or that this is just insane. Or maybe they won't shame me if I tell them that my child is struggling with this and I don't know who to talk to. Maybe the Mu'tamar people will actually refer me to resources instead of making fun of me or something. And the fact that they're having more sessions like this shows that. The second line, the Islamophobia, identity, immigrant generation, I forgot to include that research, but in the recent research by IPSU, that organization who they survey Muslims and immigrant population also. I want to try and get this accurate. And they could only ask like one or two questions. So Maristan, Dr. Rania Awad's team got the team to include questions on suicide in the general survey. So the survey talks about your life as a Muslim in America, and there's other questions about work, job applications, and do you feel harassed or Islamophobic hate messages coming to you? Different perspectives of life, just social life, economic life. And so they included two questions, I think, about suicide. Have you ever attempted? Have you thought about it? Have you attempted it? I was going to say, were you successful? But that doesn't make sense. Have you thought about it? Have you attempted it, I think? And then, you got what I meant. The data showed that the second generation immigrants, Muslims, so they get the demographic data, and so they know whether these Muslims are American-born Muslims or first generation immigrant from which continent, which country. There's some data to it. So in general, the numbers show that the second generation immigrants, so children, are the ones who rate like higher at thinking about suicide. However, if I'm not mistaken, the ones also age. That was another interesting conversation where we asked like, which age range do you think are more prone to suicide? Like 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 and above, 20 to 30, multiple phases. Yeah. So that research, and again, when it comes to research, you can probably find other research, but that research showed like 15 to 25 thought about it more. So 15 to 25 thought about it more, but 40 to 55 acted on it more. So that opened up the whole conversation of everybody was like, oh, we thought like it was a youth thing. Like, okay, well, they think about it, but you older folks are actually doing it or attempting it. And so that opened up the conversation. What's going on with that age range of immigrants from 40 to 50 plus? What do people want to call midlife crisis, transitioning crisis, children leaving the home, husbands and wives maybe divorcing after living together for 20 years, losing jobs, like what are the other social, we talked about the total health tarikan. So how come the conversation, what are the factors that might be influencing that age range, and what are the factors that are influencing the 15 to 25 age range was a bit different, like identity development, feeling belonging or lack of belonging in their own community or in the American community, in conversations like that. So just bringing that this is not the space that we're going to delve into the detail of that, but just bringing that awareness that it's not just like the younger folks kind of issue thing, which some people view. But watch out for those midlife friends of ours who are going through different crises in their life as well. And the fact that they're more successful at it is probably because they have more access. Kan? If they wanted to get medications and stuff or weapons or anything else and they're older, then they can probably get that better than the ones who are 15 to 25 thinking about it but not being very effective at execution. And that's a very important awareness to have. Warning signs. A little bit. There are others, of course. But noticing that somebody talking about feeling hopeless or not having a reason to live, someone who suddenly makes a will, although as a Muslim, we always encourage people to write wills, so this may not necessarily be a good sign. But just being aware that people quickly start giving away their possessions, what's going on. Some other warning signs, change in behavior, whether it's reckless. Another one that's not here important is also a drop in hygiene. So people tend to stop taking care of their own physical health or their home environment. And that can be related to minor depression, even major depression, and then often also is related to people who have completed suicide. They tend to isolate themselves more and maybe appearing anxious. So some of the warning signs. Again, when you just take one thing, it can seem a bit vague. All of us have some of this at some point, feeling agitated or a little annoyed or avoiding. We have some of this, but just, again, having that awareness and having the checking in with people around you. These are some of the other kind of markers. When you visit a primary care physician, they might ask you to fill out questions like this. So again, just kind of awareness of somebody who's completely losing interest in different things. If your friends change their behavior, they suddenly don't want to hang out with you anymore, they don't want to do anything with anybody, they're just staying home all the time. What's going on? Check in with them. Are they going through a difficult phase that they're not able to share with anyone? They've lost pleasure in doing all the things that they used to enjoy. Sleeping too much, sleeping too little, eating. It's just kind of looking at different change in life patterns. And the last question is more direct. Do you have thoughts that you're better off dead? Or do you have thoughts of hurting yourself in any way? So if they score pretty high on some of these numbers, then usually the doctor will also have a conversation with them and try to find out more what's going on, and then possibly refer to mental health support. Risk factors lead to ideation, lead to action, and then if we can prevent it, inshallah, death by suicide. So let's look at a case. So we've got Harun, and Harun's your friend, and you get a text message or an email or a call, and Harun says, "Hey bro, you saw that story in the news last week? Twitch killed himself." Twitch, he was my hero, man, so chill all the time. Maybe it's easier if I'm just not around anymore too. My parents keep saying I'm a burden to them. They're paying for college and all that stuff. I'm jealous of Twitch. Isn't he in a better place right now, in the afterlife? His suffering has ended. Did you hear how he died? Did he take pills? Did he cut himself? What? So if you got this text message from Harun, how might you respond initially? You don't have to go through the whole how do we fix Harun thing. No, just what would be your first response to him? Yeah? Do you want to maybe stand by? Are you loud enough? You can try. Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear you. You'd ask him where he is. Okay. So Harun, where are you, bro?
Yeah, that's how I'd respond.
Okay. Anyone else who wants to continue that text message to Harun? Yes, sister?
I would probably ask if he wanted to like call right now or if he wanted to just talk things out and make sure that I can keep talking to him and keep engaging with him.
Yeah, yeah. Because you want to know, like, what's going on right now. Right? He's starting to talk about these things. Where are you now? So checking where he is, offering to call and talk directly right now. Okay. What else?
Oh, well, he mentioned about having being a burden and being jealous and whatnot.
Yeah.
Maybe those are the key points, or something to talk about. Like, why is he feeling this way?
Mm-hmm.
Why is he jealous? Why does he feel burdened?
Mm-hmm.
Is there some stress going on?
Yeah.
So kind of build that connection before
Yeah.
you do anything that is like the thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to correct them.
Mm.
And you want to build that connection first.
Yeah.
Then engage on those talking points.
Yep. I like that you said you're not trying to correct him, or some people might say trying to fix him, or say things like, oh no, your life is not that bad, you're not Twitch, just things like that to try and like fix the situation. So Harun had offered actually some feelings already. He had said that I feel like a burden. And so when somebody does that, that means indirectly they're already giving you permission to go a little bit deeper. And if this is somebody you know, I'm not saying you have to be their counselor or something, but you are their friend or their colleague, and they might send this message to you. So they've given you a little bit of invitation to be a bit more curious, right? What's going on? Tell me more about this. Tell me more. Tell me more is a sentence that chaplains often use in an environment where we are providing immediate care like this. Like, tell me more what's going on. You said you're a burden, and then wait. Silence. Let them share what's going on. If you're sensing that it's more imminent, like if he's doing something now, like what's going on, do a little bit more assessment gently, and then reach out for help. So we'll come to how and where you can reach out for help. But in this case, it's more just he's talking, it's not quite like doing anything about it now. Let's look at case number 2, Isa. I keep having these financial problems coming back. And what Omar went through keeps playing in my mind also. It's hard to discuss this with my wife. I just can't seem to make ends meet. And working 2 jobs is hurting my body. My wife keeps complaining anyway, but I don't think I can tell her what's really going on. I feel like a failure. I can't even take care of my family. Maybe it's easier if I just don't come home. I feel useless anyway. Even the kids don't seem to care if I'm around. Maybe they're better off without me. So, say Isa's your colleague or Muktamar buddy or whatever. Who wants to offer a first response to Isa, and we can build on it?
In this case, it's more of yes, financial problem, but I believe it's more like environmental problem as well, where what he's dealing at work and also what he's dealing at home. So in this situation, you want to kind of bring him out of that environment and make a connection, maybe in a restaurant or more like a face-to-face, out in the public or whatnot, so that he can bring that emotion out or like separate himself from that environment.
Okay, I like that. Try and see where he is, invite him out of that environment for a while. And yeah, we'll be clear again, this is not the time for like counseling all his life's problems. Remember, we go back to that total well-being and wellness and health wheel. This is not we can't fix his financial problems right now. We can't figure out he and his wife's tension and issue, his kids not calling him. But the focus of this training is specific, like if this is leading to suicidal ideation, what can we do to stop that first? And then offer the resources for the longer term care that he might need. Okay, anyone else would like to offer a response for Isa?
I think, me personally,
Mm-hmm.
the ISA version sounds more eminent. It is
Mm.
further along the track of
Further along the
the
track?
ideation.
Yeah.
So I think that requires more face-to-face than the first one.
Mm-hmm.
It feels more urgent. I can't put the, how do I call it? I can't pick up the word that makes it, but
Mhm.
just reading between the lines,
Mhm.
it feels more urgent.
Thank you. That's an important awareness to have when we talk about assessment, and like what level do you think where we might not go into that detail, actually that's more for like a half a day workshop, not for a 1 hour workshop. But when you're saying de-escalate from what level of crisis, right? If somebody sends you a text message and they're like, I'm standing at the edge of the building, tell me to jump or not. Like, wait, what? Call now, and then call 911, and then call, like, it's different than like, I'm sitting at home and kind of thinking, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, I'm feeling depressed. Different level of crisis, kan? So that awareness, and so you wouldn't necessarily call, why would you call 911 or 988? The suicide crisis hotline is 988. And they're trained specifically for suicide crisis. So 988, put that in your phone. So you may not do that for somebody who's writing like the first case or even the second case in this case. But if somebody sends a more imminent message, then you would respond to that level. Yeah, saying that reminded me, there was a case, I don't know if you all heard about it, but the family gave permission for it to be shared. This was in the ISNA conference, just like 6 months ago, in Chicago, was it? At the end of the ISNA conference, there was a teenager who did jump from the parking garage, and he died. Just one of the conference family members participant. So the family actually, if I'm not mistaken, they wrote to, if I'm not, they wrote to Maristan, or they wrote to somebody to like allow that information to be shared, so that in support of the awareness of the imminence of this. You know, here we are like attending an Islamic conference, and then at the end of the 3 days, like what happens at that conference in Chicago at that day. So in the Muslim family, and I think for those of you who maybe lived in Dallas, any of you from Texas? People from Texas in 2020, there was that Muslim family. It was murder and suicide, 6 people in Dallas, and that rocked the community there. And that actually is what also inspired Dr. Rania Awad and her team at Maristan. They went down to Dallas and they conducted like post-vention workshops with different communities there on how to provide accurate support to the community, to the families. And that was one of the things that led to these kinds of trainings for them to train imams, religious leaders, chaplains, counselors, with more accurate suicide awareness, communication, and training. So we practiced some intervention already before going into the theory, but in essence, what you all recommended fits perfectly. You want to ask. You want to have a calm presence. You don't want to respond with panic and be like, what's going on? Da, 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 da. So you're escalating the energy level higher. Kan? This person might already be in a panic mode, or they might be in a very sad mode. You want to maintain a calm presence. You want to listen with compassion. You want to show curiosity, but you don't want to force. So if they're willing to share, try to find out where are they, how long they've had thoughts like this, what are they thinking of, and how have they considered, like how these ideations that they're having, what are they thinking of, ask them to maybe reflect. So this might not all happen in that first text message, right? So these are things to have at the back of our mind. So when you see Harun again, or when you see Isa again, and check in with them again, and reflect on, so what gives you hope? What gives you hope? What keeps you alive? Anything you're looking forward to next year? Are you looking forward to graduation? Are you looking forward, you said your kids have moved out, they got married or they went to college or something. Are you looking forward to grandkids? Like, find out what are the things that they're still hopeful about and reflect on that. And then keep checking in, and also offer resources if it's something that they feel, if you know of a counselor, if they want to see a counselor. Again, not forcing in these kinds of situations. It's not about coming in and say like, oh, you're having these thoughts here, here's this brochure about suicide, I just attended this training. That's likely not going to work. But have that knowledge in the back of your mind and then share it in a way. If it's a trusting relationship that you have with this person, then inshallah, you can say, I have some resources, would you like me to share them with you? And present it in a non-judgy way. I think that's the bigger issue. If people feel you're judging them, if people feel like you don't believe them anyway, or that you don't really care anyway, they're not going to want to risk being vulnerable with you. And they're probably not going to want to ask for help from you to begin with. So it's a bit of a delicate dance, and if it's not critical yet, then it doesn't feel that crisis level is not there. If it is critical, then yes, if you need to pull somebody off the building or whatever, then do so. Of course, in a time of crisis, you respond differently. These are more like talking with somebody who has the ideation but is not necessarily putting it in action yet. But you want to assess how far along they've gone. And if they start sharing, well, actually I bought pills or I stole pills from my mom. She's got these strong sleeping pills, so I kind of took some and it's with me here in the dorm. Okay, so now you know they've progressed and there's some action there. And then it's like, always also offer to accompany them. Research also shows that people are sometimes reluctant to take the first step on their own. So if you're like, Jom, let's go together to see the school counselor together, like I'll go with you. And not judgment, I love you, I care for you, I want to be by your side, I'll go with you to the school counselor. And see where that offer lands. So try and accompany them, or even calling 988. Sometimes, like Dr. Anya was sharing, call that number with them. I'll stay with you, let's call them, see what resources they have, and stay with them if it's like a bit more like crisis level. And of course, again, we're not here to be able to fix some of those long-term concerns that these people are having, but at least we're able to eliminate or reduce and then hopefully refer to resources when available. Okay. Before we go to postvention, anyone wants to share if you've experienced your own case of Isa or Harun with a friend or somebody you know? Of course, don't mention names or change the names or whatever. But anyone here feels comfortable that you want to share your own personal experience, whether it's your own journey, and whatever you share, let me know. If you want to share more and you want us to pause the live stream, we can do that. And I'm happy to do that. We can pause the live stream. They don't have to record. You can share your own personal story. We make a promise in this room within us, inshallah, whatever is shared here is handled with respect and with honor. And we're sharing for the purposes of benefiting each other, inshallah. Or if you just want to share a story of a friend or somebody else who called you, or how you went through this experience, or you've lost a loved one, I'd like to give space a few minutes for that.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. My name is Harid Abdurrahman. I live in LA. So I am an educational therapist.
Educational therapist, okay.
So I work with a lot of students who have learning disabilities, and along with
so the back can
hear
you. Sorry.
I work with students with learning disabilities, and along with that comes with mental illness and whatnot. And a lot of times I develop this, a connection with these students and with these clients. And the more we establish connection, the more they're more vulnerable, and they're like start to kind of share their struggles back at home, at school, because our job is to kind of help them navigate through that, school life. And as hard school is, it can be very stressful for the students as well. So, especially in post-COVID, where a lot of students are finally coming back to school, trying to navigate their social life, and we see a lot of students trying to figure out this so-called life, and we see a lot of students trying to trying to figure out who they are. And even though COVID was 2 years, it made a really big impact on these students, especially in the high school and middle school students. And I deal with a lot of students who come to me with with their social problem and problems back in back home. So a lot of times I had to stop the session, kind of give this moment a connection, more of their time to have a safe space. Space. So what I was gonna say is just it's. I think these, especially these young kids, they're yearning for these type of connections, whether or not whether it is through teachers and whatnot. I think as older generations, we have to give them some space or some kind of comfortability for them to kind of talk about their emotions and whatnot. And I also have a question too.
Yeah, you can ask,
Okay,
and then
I'll
I'll see whether it's
I'll ask
respond
the
now.
question at the end, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you for sharing that and your perspective as an educational therapist. So, do you provide therapy in school, or do the kids come? They come to it's a private. Okay. So working with that age group of children and youth, trying to develop their identity, trying to figure out their place in this world. And with the additional interesting challenge of being raised maybe partially online and not quite with human flesh contact. MashaAllah. Thank you for doing what you do. And I believe that personal connection that you have with the students really can influence some of their lives. I mean, it's not surprising sometimes people say you just have one session with somebody and they come back years later and they say, you didn't know that night when I messaged you, Chaplain Sakina, I really felt like I was going to take my life, and you responded. And they didn't tell me they were going to do that night. I didn't know, but I was there for whatever reason. I was able to have a conversation with them. And so the many children and youth that you're working with, please continue and collaborate, get resources if you need support or you want to share stories and stuff like that. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
My name is Rafi Abdurrahman. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. I just wanted to add to your point of you happening to be there with someone, they don't mention it. I had a friend earlier this year who had contemplated suicide, and I had talked to them very frequently in high school, and then coming out of high school I just didn't hear from them very often. But I wanted to emphasize the importance of checking up on them. Sometimes through text we don't want to be the first one to initiate the conversation, just even asking how they're doing, asking about the little things. Alhamdulillah, they opened up to me, told me that they were contemplating suicide because of certain things that happened in their life. But just sometimes people just want to realize that they have someone who's continuously checking up on them, even if they don't respond. Eventually, inshallah, they'll open up, and you don't have to poke at them for, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? You don't have to, just kind of be there for them, though, and keep letting them know that if they ever need anything or if they just want to talk,
Yeah.
that you are providing a space for them.
Keep the door open. You don't have to be yelling with a microphone, but keep the door open and keep checking in with your friend. Especially like you noticed that you were close, but then they sort of distant themselves and you just periodically checked in. Thank you for being there for your friend. Jazakallah khair, barakallahu fikum.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
So,
warahmatullahi.
in Philadelphia, within a year, 2 Indonesian students committed suicide.
Yeah.
One died last year in June. He was 16, and another one committed suicide recently. She's still at the hospital. So, and then years before, so many. I can't say many, but I know for sure that more than 3 Indonesian students tried to commit suicide. So, as part of the community, as parents, what can we do? Because we try to reach out to the parents of these students or these kids, but the parents, some of them are in denial. They don't want to talk about it. They even lied to the community that their kids didn't commit suicide, which is a lie because the school already announced it. And so, what should we do as a community? Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Ooh, waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. That's huge. That's huge. I think like what we talked about today, these kinds of information being shared with the community, do you feel that might be helpful to continue education? To me, it's education, communication, education, communication, education, communication. And underlying that education and communication is love and compassion and the building relationship and trust. So it's not just like workshop, here's the facts. Do these kids feel loved? I don't know. And I'm not judging their families, I'm not judging the community, but I don't know what goes on in people's heads. I don't. And if it's getting more, maybe do the youth... yeah. Yeah. Notice that. Before it happened. Subhanallah. Yeah. Yeah. So again, awareness, education, if the community talks about this more with each other, I think in general stigma will go down over time. Nothing's going to fix this like this. But I would encourage, if your community, and if you've noticed this happen more and more in your community, if you want to do programs, if you have not done programs, we can arrange something, whether through Maristan directly or I live an hour from Philadelphia. Like use me, let me come and let's do stuff, and talk to the youth. But also when it comes to families, so we can move in, we can continue with some sharing, but let's also, let's finish this part and then we'll continue with the sharing, because that relates to your point. What happens after it has happened? That's like the post-vention stage. One is being cautious with understanding suicide contagion. And so when it comes to the current way of training about suicide and also communication, if you notice on media, they don't describe anymore. I think the last 3 years or something, the media agreed to this, like how we communicate about suicide rules somewhere, ethics and rules. So they don't describe how it's done. So we won't hear things like, oh, that child jumped in front of the train. There's no description. It will just say child died by suicide, if the family allows it. If it's a minor, they will not say if it's by suicide or not unless the family agrees. So, and they will definitely not describe how. So there are some research which shows that describing the act leads to other people within a similar demographic, like other children maybe who read that, start developing images, and then that might build into their own suicidal ideation, or it just might cause them distress or dreams and things like that. So the media now just says death by suicide. It's very hard for you to find out exactly how. You'll probably find it in social media, but not on media. Having said that, to be able to balance that with still communicating about it for the purposes of awareness and for the purposes of fighting the stigma when people say, oh no, we're Muslims, this doesn't happen to us. I'm sorry, BS. This happens to us, just like it does with other communities. And in fact, according to that research, it's increasing for Muslim communities. And it probably is increasing for most communities because since COVID now, the newer data. But so there's a balance of we don't need the graphic details, and we still want to be honest and truthful about what happened, so that the emphasis is real and that people take it seriously. However, when it comes to the families themselves, yes, some families will just say, nope, we don't want to talk about it. No, she died in her sleep. There was no pills, nothing, whatever. Or some families turn the opposite way, where they're like, yes, we want to talk about it. Please, let's talk about it to the masjid. People should talk about it. Nobody else should lose their child like this. We should have known better. We want people to know better. Let's use my child's legacy, inshallah, to be able to benefit your child. So sometimes you have families kind of on the opposite ends. And most families are probably in the middle somewhere, and it takes them some time to reach some level of acceptance, or they may never. Wallahu alam. And the thing with something like suicide is when people say, oh, it's just my decision, I'm just doing this, it's just about me. It's never just about you, because the impact and the waves and the ripples of the wave spread not just to your family, to your community, to your neighbors, to your friends. So it's never just about that one person. So in a situation like that, I'm not probably going to force the family to speak the truth or accept it or something directly. I may continue to provide support if the community has maybe one of the local, I don't know, Islamic leaders or whoever who's able, or even their friends, who can just check in with them and see how they're doing, for them to be able to take care of themselves. Because the family themselves is suffering now, kan? And the parents with each other, maybe conflict between each other because of this. Why didn't you notice? Why didn't you notice? Well, I'm at work all day, but you're home with her, but she told you. You gave her the phone, you see what she does on social media, and now this has happened. So there's usually, after a death by suicide, usually the family, there's additional crisis, and that's a whole different secondary stress conversation. But to be aware of that, and in the moment, respecting whatever they wish, even though, like you said, but the school just announced it already that it was suicide. Why are you hiding? I'm not, as the imam or as the ustazah, as the chaplain, as the masjid community, I'm not going to go there and be like, the masjid's going to make an announcement. We want to talk about the importance of suicide. Or suddenly now, this week, you want to talk about the importance of suicide. Where was all this conversation earlier? So when it comes to, again, the postvention stage, it's recommended not to immediately do something like prevention for suicide right after a community has gone through a suicide. That's in the prevention state. That's not something you do like the month that this thing has happened. The month that this thing has happened, you provide support to the family. You provide support to the family. You educate the local community to hold their tongues. Because talking about that child to each other, about the family, behind everybody's backs, that adds to the stress and tension that's already present, and it causes harm. So whatever people are trying to judge or assume or question, just breathe, don't talk. And then, we do, and then come back to that prevention phase again. Maybe a couple months or sometime after the event, and be more serious about, inshallah, a continuing program where there's prevention, where there's support, where there's youth sessions. I like my local masjid. They have like a weekly halaqah for girls, a weekly halaqah for boys, and it's like no parents allowed, and there's pizza, and the person who runs the halaqah is somebody that the youth respect and can talk to. So try. We can only try. Inshallah, that doesn't happen, or reduce it. The acronym that Maristan came up with, which I like, is that we don't cause or add to the dhulm, 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 zalim. So we don't dramatize the event. We don't take whatever happened and, again, go into the details and give people unnecessary details and paint details of pictures or make it more dramatic than it is. We don't say anything that is harmful to the family or to the community or the news. We don't share unverified news. If somebody comes to the masjid and interviews, we heard one of the Muslim kids, something happened, and you're not authorized to talk to the media, don't talk to the media. Just don't. You don't have the authority to give unverified information. You don't know if the family has agreed to share certain information, even though you've heard the story in the masjid grapevine. Not your business. Do not share unverified information. And that's not just an ethical thing, it's a very Islamic thing, right? Not to spread unverified news. Do not share details of the logistics, descriptions of how things happen, like we talked earlier. And do not assume the motivation behind why somebody did something. We don't know what's going on in their life. We know the preventative pictures, but trying to analyze after it has happened, was it his financial issue? Was it his fight with his wife? Was it the kids? That's not the motivation of why something happened. Is not helpful at that time and can cause dhulm and can hurt the family. It can hurt the family. Right now, the ones who are living, yang dah mati, Inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. Our role now is to take care of the one who is living, the family members, the loved ones who are grieving and in pain, and who they themselves may be feeling like they don't want to live anymore after whatever pain that they've gone through. So how do we take care of them? And that relates to... Okay. I think a few of you, this is like my theme for this Mu'tamar. I've shared it in all the sessions. The Muslim is the one whose tongue and hand the people are safe from. And the mu'min is the one from whom people's lives and people's wealth are safe. Ini aja, if we just pegang this as a Muslim, ya Allah, how wonderful Islam would be. And we do, and we try, and we fail sometimes. But may Allah make it easy for us. When we focus and obsess over other descriptions of Muslims and mu'min, yes, they're important, and yes, I always encourage to hold on to this. Is somebody safe with me? If somebody sends me vulnerable text messages where they're in pain, if somebody tells me that their kids are going through a difficult time, what am I doing with my tongue? What am I doing with my hand? What am I doing with my heart? Am I making dua for them? Or am I just like bickering about, she probably deserves it, she's kind of like a whatever anyway, anak dia padan muka. What am I doing to my heart? And that relates to the lives and the wealth. So that whole core of Islam and salam and saying assalamu alaikum, you are safe with me. Assalamu alaikum, you have salam with me. This is my contract with you. You are safe with me. So the heated discussions around this topic usually comes that post-vention stage, when suddenly everybody wants to be a faqih and everyone's like freaking out, like, oh, can we do this, can we do that? Where were we, like, in the whole prevention stage? Now that this has happened, sometimes these questions, did you hear questions like this in the community? Yeah? So any responses? Anyone want to respond? Are they still Muslim? Do we pray janazah for them? Where do we bury them? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So somebody wanted to speak. Yes, the brother was saying that Allah is the judge at the end of the day of who is what happens to any of us when we die, at the point that we die and after beyond that. And still Allah Ghafurur Rahim, and still even if we are dying in sin, Allah Ghafurur Rahim, and that's, we are not the holders of the keys of Jannah. We are not the holders of the keys of Jannah. And we are the Rahmatan lil Alameen. We are the ones who bring compassion and mercy to Alameen, to the whole Alam, the whole universe. So, is this person Muslim or not? They live as a Muslim in however way that they tried living as a Muslim and they died. As long as we know, they are still Muslim. And again, going back to that fact that this is a sinful act, if it is of full violation, full mental capacity, full awareness, and can we say that we know that for 100% in that moment? After it's happened. Again, I'm not saying, oh, suicide is okay. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying now that it's happened to you, your child, your family, your community, do you know in that moment how healthy they were mentally and emotionally? And so if we don't know and we cannot say for 100% or even 90% or even 30%, then I will surrender that they are still a Muslim and I leave them in Allah's hands. And therefore, why does the question about praying janazah comes up? Some of you may know this hadith about this or conversations about this. Anybody want to respond? Have you heard any hadith about this? Or why do people say, should we salat janazah, not salat janazah? Where is that coming from? Okay, no problem. So everybody in this room is fine. We'll salat janazah. No, okay? Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 So, yes, okay. Anyone else want to respond? Have you prayed janazah for anyone that you know who died by suicide? Not sure, don't know, yeah. Would you pray janazah if that happened? Yes, you would. Most of you would. So the contention is around a hadith, and I have included it here also. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it was a situation where Jabir ibn Samurah said that a man who killed himself with a broad arrowhead was brought to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he did not offer the funeral prayer for him. This is narrated in Sahih Muslim. So the commentary of this hadith is long, as with most hadith, but most scholars have agreed that even in that instant, Rasulullah ﷺ did not pray janazah, but he did not tell the Sahaba not to. So that man still received a janazah prayer. It was just not led by Rasulullah ﷺ. Is that clear? Is that clear? Yes, you can look up the commentary. It happened. It was just not led by Rasulullah ﷺ. So some of the commentary talk about how that was Rasulullah ﷺ's way, in a way, not to encourage this suicide by slightly distancing himself, but to still fulfill the right of the person. And that person actually had come, if I'm not mistaken, the earlier part of the chain is that person had come to Rasulullah and kind of asked him, like, I don't want to live anymore, like, can I take my life? I'm in too much pain. And Rasulullah had said, no, and I don't want to quote it incorrectly, but if you look up the hadith and try and look up the explanation, this is part of it. So it was like he had already come, Rasulullah had said no, and then he did it anyway. And so Rasulullah did not, the point is he did not stop the janazah prayer. The companions still prayed for this person, and Rasulullah just withheld from this one incident. So the scholars then come into if you want to know the fiqh, we can go to the fiqh. So some scholars then said So in that case, if we take that model, when you go back to your masjid, so maybe the imam of the masjid shouldn't lead, the regular imam shouldn't lead the Jama'ah following that Prophet Muhammad SAW, that he was the leader and he didn't lead, but other people led. So other people lead the Jama'ah. But most scholars said it doesn't matter, we are not Rasul SAW. Jama'ah went on, whoever's the imam leads the Jama'ah. But in either case, do we do the janazah? Do we do the Jama'ah? Yes. Where do we bury them? So this, I guess, relates to that second question. So some people are saying, well, they're Muslim and don't do janazah, then we can't bury them with the Muslims. So all that whole conversation kind of goes into one. And focusing back on the people who are living, the family members and the domino effect, and providing care for them. And if you want to start arguing about fiqh, at this point, after the person has died, now when the family is in suffering, that is totally not the wrong time to be doing it. If we want to do a discussion on prevention, have that ongoing all the time. Include topics, include about this. Educate the community about this so people know. And people are not fighting with each other. And this half of the masjid is like, oh, we shouldn't go lah, the janazah kan, didn't they, take their lives? And the other half of the masjid is like, well, but if that's our child, wouldn't you want people to come and pray? Like, weren't they going through depression and stuff like that? How do we know? So I would always advise, do the janazah, treat them as best as you can. The loved ones are alive. Whatever they're going through is probably the worst pain, and that's our primary focus for now. The one who has passed is in Allah's hands. We fulfill the fardu kifayah as our fulfilling of fardu kifayah of anybody's rights. We make dua for them. We seek protection from that being our path or to any of our loved ones, and we support the family members. All right, we are time. Okay, can I have a few extra minutes? So, if anyone would like to share one takeaway you have from today, or one thing that you plan to do to improve your psycho-spiritual mental health, or one thing that you want to do to learn more about this topic, or to share or encourage other people. So you can look at these prompts, or you can share. I just want to invite voices in different ways. So if looking at these prompts and something here connects with you and you would like to share that with others in the room, maybe that inspires somebody, please do so. Or if we want to continue the earlier conversation a little bit, if you want to share your own personal story or the story of a loved one or a friend or a student or anything, you can do that as well. And I would love to hear your voices at this point. Thank you. Yes, brother at the back. Grey, green, brown, whatever color. Brown.
First of all, thank you, Chaplain, for bringing awareness to such an important topic that I feel is often neglected in the Islamic community. So I've lived in many different Muslim communities, Malaysia, the UK, and the US, and one thing that I've noticed is that the awareness surrounding mental health is often non-existent or kind of like hush-hush, right? So for example, if I say I'm depressed, a common response might be, oh, make dua or go to imam and talk about it. And while this is important, I think that sometimes more is needed, maybe in the form of therapy or drugs, right? If I break my leg, I'm going to make dua and maybe talk to imam, but I'm also going to go to the hospital and get my leg fixed. Do you think that this is an issue in Muslim communities? And if so, how do you, what can we do? Like, what commitment can we make to kind of create change?
So did you attend the session this afternoon about stigma and mental health?
I did not.
Well, see, that was the answer to your question. You can watch the recording. For real, that we spent like an hour and a half on mental health stigma in the Muslim community, and there's a recording on YouTube from the IMSA channel somewhere. So details are there. Short answer, yes, it's a struggle in our community, and actually it's a struggle in most communities. It's not just a Muslim wonderful specific problem. I just feel it more personally because that is my community, and I get very angry when I'm like, but Islam is like rahmah and compassion, and why are we doing this to each other? So education, awareness, communication, continue. If you have a role in your community board or halakha with Sunday you're teaching younger kids halakha, Sunday school, whatever, talk about these things. Talk about it in an age-appropriate way. And resources are available for that. There are mental health stigma awareness conversations with younger children that you can have. And then the older generations, well, younger, older, subjective. I feel young and very old on the same day. Point being, make different kinds of communication and engagement that feels relevant to the different members of our community, so they're included in the conversation. And then there's going to be people who are not interested, and that's fine. As with anything, whatever topic you're kind of trying to bring awareness to. Some people just be like, oh, whatever, okay, that's all right. But you get some people in the room, and some people who are inspired or connected or develop some change in the community, and that's how we proceed, inshallah. Intention, action, intention, action. Thank you. While you do that, I'm actually going to pull out a resource document, but my ears are listening.
All right, Bismillah. Coming in as a role of let's say teachers or like a counselor or as myself, like educational therapist. When you're working with students and you develop this connection, this special connection because of this frequent session that you have, or the frequent, physical
you get the time
connection,
with
exactly.
multiple sessions.
Like I had several times with the students where they felt more comfortable talking to me as opposed to the psychiatrist. Or like they brought a concern that talking to you is better than talking to a psychiatrist. And obviously, you don't want to discount the words, the therapy sessions that they might have and whatnot. So my question is how do you kind of draw the line of yes, at the same time you provide this, comfort and safe space, and at the same time, encourage them to still be, talking to this therapy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Drawing this kind of border without.
So what are they saying? Are they saying I prefer talking to you, my therapist sucks?
So, along that line, yeah, exactly. Because obviously, the time they talk with the psychiatrist is only 1 hour, 1 hour a week,
right.
Where they see you more frequently. So there is the connection element to it that we provide, but then, of course, the professional side of it is also needed.
I feel like what you are recommend, you can't force them.
Yeah, exactly.
So if that therapist is somebody they trust and they feel like it's benefiting them and they want to continue, then I don't know if it's an issue that therapist doesn't jive, so maybe should their parents consider another therapist, or they feel like the whole process is rubbish and they don't really want to. But you are somebody they trust, and if you are already kind of encouraging them, hey, you guys should continue with your therapist. We can still have our sessions and our halakha and our jam, but it's really beneficial for you to continue with this therapist long term because they can offer something additional. But I don't know what relationship they have with that therapist. I don't know how effective that therapist is. So
encouraging while keep your doors open.
Yeah. So at least they don't lose that bond with you, and you are connected to resources because of the nature of your job. So you have